Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel and welcome back to another reading vlog. So today's reading vlog is going to be one that I'm actually pretty excited for, and I don't actually know when you'll be seeing this. So it's currently August the 29th in 2023. You might see this in 2024, I'm not sure yet. But today's reading vlog is going to be all about my previous favourite YA authors. So obviously I've had this channel for a really long time. I started it back in, I believe, 2011. And since then, obviously my reading tastes have changed. And I would say within like the past 2 years, I've really started to develop myself as a reader. And I've started reading kind of like outside my comfort zone. And I've started reading more genres. I read a lot more adult fiction now. Whereas when I started this channel, I read a lot of YA, and obviously with that I had my favourite YA authors. Now for August, I had a book on my TBR that was written by one of my favourite YA authors back in the day, and then I realised that I also had a book on my Kindle that was written by another author who was also one of my favourite YA authors back in the day. So I thought it would be kind of cool to do a reading vlog where I read books by authors who I really loved back when I was a teen, to see whether their books are hits or misses for me now. Now obviously, no matter the outcome of whether I think these books are hits or misses, they are just my personal opinions. Don't take it to heart, don't take it personally. If you want to read these books, read these books. If you love them, good for you, but these are going to be all my personal opinions. Now I'm going to stick to 3 books in this reading vlog. I might check on my shelves to see whether there are any authors who have come out with any more books and kind of do another one where I read a couple of different authors. But the 3 books that I'm going to be reading in this reading vlog, the first one is going to be Renegades by Marissa Meyer. Marissa Meyer is the author of the Lunar Chronicles series, which I was a huge fan of back in the day. I'm also going to be reading Poster Girl by Veronica Roth. I will read that on my Kindle. And then the last book that I'll read is The Queen's Assassin by Melissa de la Cruz. Obviously Veronica Roth is the author of the Divergent trilogy that I absolutely really loved back in the day, and Melissa de la Cruz, I absolutely adored her Blue Blood series. So those are the 3 authors' books that I'm going to read back in the day. Obviously when I get round to them I will tell you a little bit more about them. Now as I said, the first book that I'm going to be reading is Renegades by Marissa Meyer, and as you might have guessed, I have already started reading it. I'm not that far in, but I've made a good little chunk out of the book. And as I said, she is the author of the Lunar Chronicles series. This is the first book, Cinder, and this series was a set of fairy tale retellings. Each book is interconnected into the other, and there's kind of like a bigger plot going on. However, each book follows a different kind of like fairy tale. Obviously, as you can tell, the first book follows Cinderella. I believe the second book followed like Red Riding Hood, and so on and so forth. It was, I think, my first step into any sort of fairy tale retelling back in the day, and honestly it made me fall in love with not only Marissa Meyer's writing but also just fairy tale retellings in general. I feel like there's only really been 2 series that I've loved that have been fairy tale retellings, and that is the Lunar Chronicles and obviously ACOTAR. Now I have already read a Marissa Meyer since I read this when I was a teen. I actually read Heartless back in 2021, and I am sad to admit that I really didn't like it. I hated it. I nearly DNF'd it. It was not for me. I know a lot of people really loved that book. I just couldn't get on board with it. I really just, something about it, I think it was the whimsical writing, I just didn't enjoy it. Obviously I have to tell you what this is about. So Renegades is set in this futuristic kind of like sci-fi world where I guess you could say superheroes now exist, and they are technically called prodigies, and prodigies are people with exceptional powers or talents. And back in the day they were basically prosecuted, tormented and hunted, and so eventually this group called the Anarchists rose, and I believe it was a guy named Ace, and essentially that's led to where we are now in this book, where the Anarchists were kind of destroyed but not really by a group called the Renegades. Now the Renegades are made up of prodigies as well, however they've taken the stance that they are superheroes and they're going to save everyone from the Anarchists because they're evil and they're villains. So this book follows Nova, and she is an anarchist. She's a prodigy. She has the power to put people to sleep with her touch. And the book also follows a guy named Adrian who is on the complete opposite side to her, and he is a renegade, and his power is that he can draw things and they basically come to life. For instance, he can draw like a t-shirt and then a t-shirt will come to life. Now at some point these 2 people's lives interconnect and they're both on opposite sides of each other, and I guess that the plot goes from there. So far I'm really enjoying it. It's so fast paced, it jumps right into the deep end, which is something that I really love about books. The only thing that I'm kind of not enjoying is it almost feels very like adolescent, in the sense that all of these people like have costumes, and the way that they speak is kind of like making me cringe a little bit. I don't know what it is. I feel like it might be a me thing. I'm not okay, I'm gonna shock people when I say this. I'm not overly keen on superheroes and like superhero movies. I feel like the only one I've really truly loved is the Dark Knight trilogy, which I feel like is top tier. Okay, don't judge me. I love that trilogy, but I've just never been into the whole superhero thing. But I am really loving how this is going. I love this so far way more than I loved Heartless. This is kind of what I expected from Heartless. Like, it has that kind of epic, you know, fast-paced writing that I remember Marissa Meyer for. I love the way that she kind of describes things. I feel like the world so far has been really well laid out, and I'm only like 66 pages in, and at the beginning it gives you kind of like the backstory straight away. I understood everything, everything was clear, I had a good image in my head of like what was playing out. Just I'm enjoying it so far, and I'm really hoping that this is going to be a win for me. I feel like this could be a hit, and it's a good thing because then I'll carry on with the trilogy. I can't say much more than I already have because obviously I'm only 66 pages in. However, I'll possibly give you guys an update when I'm like halfway through, which I've got quite a way to go. Hey everyone, I am currently getting ready. It is a couple of days later and I am now on chapter 19, which is like 237 pages in. So after I finish this chapter, I will be officially halfway. I did want to get halfway last night and I just couldn't keep my eyes open. I do this every single time. I have the intention of staying up really late and reading, and it just never works out for me because I just end up really tired. Anyway, I'm getting ready because I'm going to be seeing my friend Sophie today, and if you're judging me right now for the way that I'm putting on foundation, it's because I'm using MAC Face and Body, and that is literally, this is how you're meant to put it on, okay? So don't judge me. This is literally what makeup artists say. Anyway, I am really enjoying it so far. I definitely think that this is what I expected Heartless to be. Like, this is the level of literature that I wanted from Marissa Meyer the last time that I read one of her books. This world is just so well written about that I can imagine everything. Now, I'm a very visual reader, so I expect, you know, really detailed descriptions, and I expect kind of the world to be built in a way that makes sense, and it does, which I'm very excited about because it literally means that I can picture everything without being confused, and I'm just really, I'm invested. I am there in this world. Now, I'm kind of struggling at the minute to decide whether or not this is a 3 or a 4 star. I feel like depending on the way the story goes and how much I enjoy it is when I will give it my rating, but so far it's promising. So it's actually told in 2 perspectives, which I wasn't expecting, and it doesn't necessarily tell you at the beginning of the chapter which perspective you're reading in, which can sometimes be a little bit confusing for about 1 or 2 lines, because you're just like, okay, well, whose perspective am I reading from here? Because you get Adrian's perspective and then you also get Nova's perspective. And what I like about this book so far, and what I didn't really expect, is Nova has gone into the Renegades, which I wasn't expecting. I thought that this book was just going to be them kind of like beefing the whole time, and she's actually infiltrated them. She is now one of them, and she is basically a spy for the anarchists, which is so exciting because I'm excited to see how this plays out, because she is already uncomfortable with the fact that she is having to be around these people and in their building, and there are so many of them. Like, if they found out that she is Nightmare, she's fucked. And I'm just going to quickly mention this because this is the only thing that's griping me right now. The only thing that I don't like about this book is the fact that they will reference to one another with both sets of names. So they will call each other their normal names, and then they'll call each other by their superhero names. Like, they kind of mix it up a lot, and that's the only aspect of this book that I find really confusing, because I'm already bad with details like that. And so when you're mixing two sets of names and there's so many people to remember, it's just way too confusing for me. And the book actually does have a like set of character names at the beginning, so you can kind of like flip back and forth. But honestly, if I was reading this on Kindle, it would be a struggle, because you haven't really got that ability to just be able to like flip back to the pages that you need. Obviously I can do that, but that would be a drawback if I was reading this on Kindle right now. The other thing that I'm going to mention as well is there's very much this kind of conflict between the two, where one will think the other is evil and the other will think the other is evil, and there's kind of this little kind of battle going on where I, as the reader, am trying to figure out which side I am on. And to be honest, it's a very grey area right now. Like, I don't think either of them are in the right. I think they're both bloody wrong. I feel like they just need to bash their heads together and actually sort it out and work together. And I'm very interested to find out, because on the blurb, basically on the blurb it says they should be sworn enemies, but Nova finds herself torn between Adrian and the Renegades and a villain that could destroy them both. I'm very interested to find out who this villain is. Like, is it one of the council? Because in this book you have the Renegades, who are like the good guys, the superheroes, the ones that swooped in and saved everyone. But Nova doesn't like them. She's an anarchist. The anarchists are the ones that tried to like rise up and kind of like change things to how they were, and then the Renegades came after them and swooped in and basically, you know, shoved them underground basically. And you actually found out that the reason Nova doesn't like them is because and this isn't a spoiler because this happens very, very early on, but Nova's parents actually died because the Renegades didn't swoop in and save them, even though the Renegades said that they would help. And so that's why Nova finds herself in the anarchist side. And the Renegades are actually run, and they were founded by this group called the Council. Now the Council are kind of like the government in this world now. They oversee everything. They oversee the laws, they oversee the Renegades. They are the power in this place. And the other thing that I think is interesting is Adrian, who is the guy who is in the Renegades, his dads are actually on the council, and one of them is one of the ones that Nova has a very big revenge plot against, and she tried to kill him. I'm very excited to see how this plays out. It's so interesting so far, and it's so fun. I am struggling with kind of taking this seriously, especially when, you know, you have their superhero names and also you realise that they have costumes and whatever. Like, I don't know, there's something about superheroes that just doesn't do it for me. I've never been like a superhero person. As I said, I'm not really into Marvel, I'm not really into DC, although I did really love the Dark Knight trilogy. That's like one of the ones, that's one of my staples. I'm like, yeah, I could watch that for the rest of my life and never be bored. But yeah, just something about superheroes is just, I don't know, I think on screen it's very different, but like in this book, especially because it's YA, there's just something so like unserious about it that I'm like, I can't take it seriously. Anyway, that is my update. I will definitely be halfway before the end of the day. So there's that. I would like to finish it. I don't think I'm going to be able to, but that is my update. I will come back to you with another update when I have one. Okay, I'm going to be honest with you guys. I don't actually remember the last update I gave you, and if I am being completely honest, I do feel like the last time I made an update for this vlog, I was like, I'm gonna, you know, update you guys when I'm halfway through, and I didn't. I'm basically in the middle of doing like 3 different reading vlogs, and I just think I got a little confused as to which one I was filming at the time. Anyway, the update is I have finished Renegades by Marissa Meyer. Oh my god. This exceeded my expectations. I loved this. This was so fun. Did I have trouble with the idea that these people dress in lycra and run around in capes? Yes, but it was so good. This is like exactly what I expected from Marissa Meyer's writing when I read Heartless, and I didn't get that. I love the characters. I love the world that's been built. It's set in kind of like, when I imagine this world, I imagine like a very kind of futuristic and run down New York, or I imagine Chicago. I don't know why, I just feel like that's a vibe for me. There's so much that happens in this book. Every single chapter just kept me on the edge of my seat, and I had so many questions that I just needed answering. This is such a good start to the trilogy, and I cannot wait to read on with this. I'm so happy I just pushed myself to read this, because honestly I had this as one of my books that I had to read for 2023, and I kept putting it off because I was like, oh, I didn't like Heartless, and maybe I don't like Marissa Meyer's writing anymore. How wrong I was. It's just so entertaining. The only thing that I didn't really keep up with was all of the names. I didn't like the fact that not only were their superhero names mentioned a lot, but also their normal names, and I was getting the two confused, and I was still trying to remember like who was who. And there is kind of like this bit at the front which is a cast of characters which tells you who they are and also what their power is, but I was still getting confused and I couldn't be bothered to keep flipping back and forth to have a look at it. I don't know whose side I'm on right now. I don't feel like either side is good, you know. I feel like there's a very grey area. I can't wait to see how this all plays out. That ending was really good. I am going to admit I did spoil myself, because I was flipping through to try and see how long the book was, and although I only read one line, and that one line was enough to spoil me, because I accidentally read that one line. It was basically a character saying something but you couldn't see which character had said it, and then during the book something was revealed and I was like, I already know what's going to happen. I've spoiled myself. So I feel like maybe if I didn't spoil myself, it wouldn't have been super obvious to me what was going to happen. So I cannot wait to read the next books. It's really frustrating reading this because there's just so many times when I'm like, it's so obvious that Nova is Nightmare, and it's so obvious that Adrian is the Sentinel? It's so obvious that both of those characters are those people, and yet no one ever figures it out. And now something has happened, so everyone's like, oh, that person doesn't exist anymore. Just, I don't know, I feel like they should have figured it out. They really should have figured it out. It just seems like maybe hindsight is 20/20. Maybe it's because I'm the reader and I'm like taking a step back and I'm not in these characters' positions. I just feel like there were too many coincidences and nothing's really clicking for them. Nothing. It never clicks. I definitely wasn't expecting that turn of events at the end. I feel like I should have, considering that there was kind of a betrayal towards the beginning, but I wasn't expecting it, and I was like, oh, should have seen that coming, but I didn't. I'm just very, very excited in this turn of events. I can't wait for the next book now. I kind of immediately want to pick it up, but at the same time I have other books to read that I need to read before I go on holiday, so I'm gonna give this a 4-star. Not quite a 5 for me, but definitely a 4. I don't really feel like the romance was hitting for me. There wasn't honestly a lot, and to be honest it only really kind of hit at the end. The characters are kind of going through it because obviously Nova is dealing with this whole crisis of like, I don't know who I am, and I don't know what I stand for, and I don't know what side I want to be on. And then Adrian is like, I really like her. Just a lot is going on and these characters are just not ready, and so like nothing really happens, but like I wasn't feeling the chemistry. I think it's just because it's YA and I don't really gravitate towards YA romance anymore. It was cute, but at the same time, like I was here for just like the plot overall. And I love that this world is kind of so 50-50 on the idea of the renegades and like how they feel about them, because usually you'd be like, oh, you know, everyone loves superheroes, but no, people actually don't like them. There are people that love them and people that loathe them, and I love the fact that that is happening in this world. I also really enjoy the fact that Nova is going through this whole turmoil, because it seems towards the end that maybe she's deciding like, actually, I'm gonna stand by what I originally said and wanted to stand for. But like this whole book she's been going through it, because I feel like she's finally been seeing these renegades as people, including the counsellors, which are her #1 enemy over everyone else. And she's been seeing them as human, which has been really enjoyable to read about. And I'm excited to see kind of what happens in the next book and see whether she still has this turmoil, because as far as I'm concerned, she's still going to be in the renegades. I just don't know what else is going to be happening, because oh, just the way that it ends, guys, the way that it ends. This was an absolute win, and I'm so glad I read this, and I'm very excited now to read the other books by authors whose books that I used to love, to see whether those are also hits. So Marissa Meyer, I'm still a fan of you, girl. Like, this was good. Heartless, we're just gonna forget about Heartless. This was so enjoyable. Anyway, I will update you guys with the next book that I'm gonna read whenever I'm gonna read it. It's currently September, so I don't know when my next book read is gonna be, but we'll see. Hello everyone. Just for context, it is currently January of 2024. To be specific, it is January 30th of 2024. I previously filmed my last clip for this reading vlog in August of 2023, so welcome to the new year. I'm gonna just like go in here and say there is a reason that I am filming this video now, because I didn't expect to be doing any part of this vlog, especially at this time. If you are a Sarah J Maas stan like myself, you would know January 30th of 2024 is very significant, because it is currently the release day of House of Flame and Shadow, which is Crescent City 3, aka the answer to all of our prayers, aka the answer to that huge cliffhanger at the end of the second book. I am going to add context here. In August of 2023, I pre-ordered this book with Bloomsbury, which I never do. The only reason that I did that was because they had signed copies, and although they're digitally signed, it's still, you know, exclusive, and I needed a signed copy because I have a signed copy in the Throne of Glass series, I have a signed copy in the Yakatar series, I needed a signed copy in the Crescent City series to complete, I don't know, some stupid collection in my head that I needed. So I pre-ordered with them in August of 2023. 2 weeks ago, money was taken from my account for this order, right? And I swear to God, I can't find this email now, but I swear to God, there was an email that said they would try and send the book for release day. Every time I've gone on my account within the past week, the expected dispatch date was January 30th, which is today, which is release day, which I was like, that is a shitter. I have planned my whole kind of like reading schedule around this book, because I was like, I don't want to start a big book, aka like a 400-page book, and then have House of Flame and Shadow arrive, because I don't want to be in the middle of that and then have to stop to read House of Flame and Shadow, because I can't stop. I can't be in between two books. I have to finish the book. So I read a flipping trashy little romance because I knew I'd get through it quickly. I knew that it was easy to read, and I knew it'd be a good vibe. I finished that yesterday. I decided to pick up a book for this vlog because I had a funny feeling that Bloomsbury were gonna fuck me over good and proper, and they did. I kid you not, about 10 minutes ago, I received an email from Bloomsbury saying that there has been a delay at the warehouse and that the copies of the book will probably be sent out on February the 2nd. They're hoping that they're going to be dispatched on February 2nd, which is Friday, which means I'm not going to get that book till next week, which I suppose silver linings gives me time to read and finish this book, although I might have to go on to one straight after this. But Bloomsbury, I like, people are going to watch this and be like, oh, you're being so over dramatic over a book. But when you've pre-ordered that far in advance and they know how big this release is, you have still managed to mismanage the whole thing. What are you doing? Even Waterstones, who I've pre-ordered with before, and they are awful for pre-orders, they were sending out the books yesterday. I've had such bad experiences with them in the past, which is why I don't pre-order with them. I can't right now. I'm so mad. I'm gonna fight someone. And for anyone who is judging me right now for being like, girl, it's just a book, look, this is my NFL. This is the one thing I look forward to, like, every year or every 2 years. Like, this is what keeps me going, okay? This is what keeps me sane. This is my World Cup. This is my UEFA Cup, okay? This is a big deal to me. And I'm so mad. Anyway, that's my little rant. If any of you are watching this who went through the same thing, oh my God, I feel for you right now. I'm so sorry. On Bloomsbury's behalf, I am so sorry. Anyway, rant over, welcome back to the reading vlog. I'm now going on to my second book, which is by an author that I was obsessed with back in the day, and I haven't actually read anything since their original trilogy, even though they came out with a book not soon after that last book released in that trilogy. I just never read it. I don't know why. I think there was a little bit of controversy surrounding it, but I can't remember what the controversy was, so I never read it. However, that book is Poster Girl by Veronica Roth. Veronica Roth is obviously the author of the Divergent trilogy. I was obsessed with this trilogy back in the day. The movies are still one of my favourite guilty pleasure movies. Like, the last film that they came out with, what was that? The first film, oh my god, I eat the first film up, okay? It's not the best. The first film was actually a pretty decent adaptation. The second film, and the third film, not even going to talk about it. But these books were everything. An unpopular opinion, I loved the ending of the last book. People were mad over it. I didn't so much like the dual perspectives and the writing, but the ending was everything to me. Like, honestly, it's my Roman Empire. I think about it often, and I think it's what made me fall in love with, like, ruthless authors. Like, authors that aren't afraid to do the unthinkable to their characters. So you're probably wondering what this is. I believe that this is classed as an adult. I thought it was young adult, but gauging by what I've read so far, which isn't that much, I think the character might be in her 20s. I'm not sure. I feel like she might be. She hasn't really kind of like divulged into how old she is. She's just kind of divulged into how old she was when she became the poster girl. This is still a dystopian, but this takes place in, imagine like if Divergent was still Divergent, but it was about the aftermath of when everything was overthrown. So, you know, the factions didn't exist anymore, kind of like the leaders were killed off. Like, imagine that, but like this is what Poster Girl is. This is the post dystopian world where the fascists, or, you know, the group that has controlled everything has been taken down, and this is what we're left with. In this book we are following a young woman named Sonia, and she was the poster girl, and I'm guessing what happened because I'm not that far in so far, but she was the face of this group that took over. Now, this group was called the Delegation, and everyone basically had this weird chip, I think in their eyes, but it basically tracked all of their movements, and the Delegation were kind of like the law. So if they saw something that you were doing, I suppose like stealing, or I don't know how like crazy their rules were, but maybe lying or whatever, if they saw something that broke their moral code or whatever, or their laws, then you'd probably be executed. There's already talk of like executions and stuff in this book, and like people that had died, but they were, I'm gonna guess, awful because they've been taken down. And Sonia was basically the face of all of this because they made a poster of her when she was like 16. They used her photo. Now that the Delegation has fallen, she's now living in this place called the Aperture, which is essentially a prison for all of the kind of like high-ranking members of the Delegation, and they're basically left there to fester and live their lives. And they do get like donations of like clothes and stuff like that, but they basically get everyone's leftovers, and I think food is not scarce, but like they don't really have fresh food, and like they're having to learn to do everything for themselves, and they're like barbed wired in. So whilst Sonia is living this life, you know, she's been in prison for 10 years, she ends up being approached by someone who basically says to her, if you find this girl who was stolen by the old regime and you bring her back, then we will give you your freedom, i.e. she'll get to leave the Aperture, which is at the moment looking like a really horrific place to live. I'm really excited to read this one. I'm interested to delve back into Veronica Roth's writing. So far what I'm reading is pretty damn good. I don't know how I'm going to rate it yet because obviously I haven't read the whole story. What I'm liking so far is Veronica Roth's writing. She writes in such a way that is really detailed that I can picture everything that's going on. So I'm very, very excited to see where this goes. And it's also really interesting to see kind of like a post-dystopian world, because that's not often something that we get to see. I feel like the only one that I've really seen so far was when I read kind of like the last book in the Shatami series, like the one that was, I think it was called Believe Me, and you kind of saw a little bit of the aftermath of the regime in that one falling, but you didn't really kind of see a lot of the fallout from it. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens in this book. I'm hoping it's going to take me on a wild ride and there's going to be some twists and some turns, and I'm excited. I'm excited to see what I make of this one. I don't think I've read a dystopian since Shatter Me. I think that even before Shatter Me, I don't think I had read any dystopian in a while, so I'm very excited to get into it. I'm not that far in. I haven't even finished chapter 1 yet, but obviously now I have some time to read this book and finish it because of Bloomsbury, so silver linings. So mad. I'm so mad. So I'm going to make this very quick brief update now because I have made some progress with Poster Girl by Veronica Roth. I'm currently 47% of the way through, and my hope is that tonight, or at least by the early hours of tomorrow morning, I can finish this, because I feel like I'm actually speeding through it now. I feel like it's very quick to read, but the reason I want to finish this is not only so that I can finish this up and then I only have one more book to read for this vlog, but I told you guys the other day that my copy of House on Flame and Shadow wasn't actually supposed to dispatch till today. It's currently the 2nd February, but I don't think it was yesterday. I think it was a day before. I received an email in the morning saying that the courier was expecting my parcel, and I was like, hang on a minute, does this mean that they're gonna get it? And then yesterday I got a time slot and it's arrived. I'm so happy and I'm so nervous. I'm ready for mass trauma and crying and screaming, and I say I'm ready, but I'm probably not ready. I've seen a lot of people crying. I don't know how I feel about that. But anyway, I'm hoping to finish this book so that I can move on to House of Flame and Shadow, because this is on my mind. I'm now having to like quickly scroll past TikToks now because I'm getting House of Flame and Shadow content, and luckily people are putting spoiler warnings, but I know, just like anything, there's always going to be that one person that doesn't, and I'm terrified. I am fighting for my life out here. I am in the trenches. So update on Poster Girl. I'm actually really enjoying it so far. The only thing I will say is that I'm not enjoying it as much as, say, Divergent. Like, I'm not as invested. I'm not as invested in the world. I'm not as invested in the characters. And the biggest issue that I have with this so far, there are two big issues. One is that I'm having trouble keeping up with the amount of characters in this book, because not a lot of them show up regularly enough for me to like warrant remembering them. But not only that, I feel like the reason I'm having trouble remembering them is the descriptions are either too late or there's just no descriptions at all. Like, for instance, I think it was about nearly 100 pages in when I found out the colour of this guy's hair, and I'm a very visual reader, so like that kind of description might be insignificant for some people, but for me, I like a little bit of character description so that I can differentiate between, you know, that character and another character, and it just solidifies them in my head. The other big issue that I have is that it's reading like a YA, and this is very much an adult book. I believe I've worked out how old she is, and I think she's around about 26 or 27 in this book. And that's another thing. I don't know the ages of anyone. I think the age of one person has been mentioned, and that's it. Just the descriptions in this book are lacking. It's like very minor things as well. Like that wouldn't bother some people, but for me it really bothers me because I need to visualize those characters. I need to know where they are in their lives. You know, what the colour of their eyes are, what the colour of their hair is, what they're wearing. And I'm not getting any of that. For a really long time, I was having trouble figuring out how old this main character was and like if this actually was an adult book, because I was like, this isn't reading like an adult book, but I'm pretty sure she's like older than what I think she is. And yeah, she's got to be around 26 or 27, but she hasn't actually verified that. There's like very big issues that I have with this so far, but overall I find that the writing's very easy to read, and it's, I would say, a fairly decently paced book. I am glad that this is just a standalone, because I don't think I could read on if this was a series, because I just don't feel that invested in it. I do think the world is really interesting, you know, the idea that these people have like these things implanted in their brains and they were able to see and learn things through that. I like the idea, it's interesting. I'm not that invested, but it's okay. I feel like if anything, I'm gonna leave this book having given it a 3-star rating, and I do feel like I'd read on with Veronica Roth books. I just don't think that I would rush to read them. Anyway, that's my update. I'm very, very excited to finish this, just like move on to House of Flame and Shadow. But that's all I have to say. So hopefully my next update will be once I finish this book. Please excuse the way that I currently look. I have literally, as you can tell, just got out of the shower. So this is what we're dealing with right now. You know, this is just how it is. So I'm here for an update because officially in the early hours of this morning I managed to finish Poster Girl by Veronica Roth. I pretty much made it my mission because obviously I want to move straight away onto the new Sarah J Maas book, so I was like, I need to finish this. So what are my overall thoughts? So I did give it 3 stars. 3 stars for me is like an okay rating. It doesn't necessarily mean that the book was good or bad. Sometimes I feel like the negatives in this one outweigh the positives, but I do overall feel like it was well written. My biggest issue and like the biggest complaint that I have is that this book is meant to be an adult book, and I don't really feel like the book gave the complexity of an adult book, and I don't feel like the characters read like adults. The main characters are either in their late 20s or 30s, and then the other surrounding characters are like well into like their 50s and 60s, and I just don't feel like this book read like those characters' ages. I think overall as well the story was interesting, but for me when it comes to dystopian, I think I prefer kind of a bigger series so that we can further explore the world a little bit more. I think there were things that were briefly mentioned but not really elaborated upon, like we have different districts in this world and you don't really know why the world became dystopian in the first place. You kind of know that technology took over a little bit, but you don't really know why. Like, why is the world split up into different districts and why can't you travel there, and are the districts different? Like, I want those answers, and obviously this is a standalone and so you don't really get those answers because nothing happens after this book. I also think that this book was meant to be emotional. Like, towards the end you do get answers for a lot of things and they are very emotional realizations for the main character Sonia, but I never really found myself getting choked up or emotional. Like, I felt a little bit sad for her, but I didn't actually feel sad personally. Like, I didn't feel overwhelmed with emotion, which honestly I feel like with the revelations that she had, I should have been upset, I just wasn't. Now obviously I'm being a negative Nancy, but one of the positive things that I would say about this is that I did kind of like the brief exploration that this book does of kind of like class systems and privilege, because you soon realise in this world that, you know, the system was quite oppressive for a lot of people, especially people that weren't in kind of the higher financial bracket. But for those characters who lived very comfortable lives financially, you found that they had more power and they actually could use the system to their benefit, which is something that Sonia realised pretty late on. And so I really like the exploration of that, because I think that some of that is very much mirrored in our own world as well. But if I was going to say anything about this book, I don't necessarily think that it was that memorable. Like, I definitely know that I will get to the end of the year, I will see that I've read this book and I probably won't remember a lot of it. I might remember kind of like brief scenes, but it's not overly memorable. Give it a few years and I won't even remember what this one was about or which characters it followed. And obviously in this vlog it's a case of, is it a hit or is it a miss? I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily tell people not to read this book, and I myself aren't put off from reading any Veronica Roth books in the future, so I would say in that way it's a hit. But I would say in terms of like, if I could pick up this or any other book that I knew was going to be like a 5-star or whatever, like, it would probably be a miss. So this one is definitely a mixed bag. I think the writing was decent enough that I would read more Veronica Roth in the future, so I suppose in that way it was a hit, okay? Like, I would definitely read more Veronica Roth, so I don't feel like this one's been overly terrible. Anyway, that was my thoughts on Poster Girl. Now you will see another future me who is reading the last book in this reading vlog, so take it away, future Claire. So you are officially seeing this a year later. I think the last update that I ever made for this reading vlog was actually August of last year. It's now 2024, we're currently in July, and I don't know if I told you guys what I was reading, because honestly I don't know what I filmed in this. Originally I was going to read a Melissa de la Cruz book, and I did start to read one of her fantasies, and I got like 3% in, and I kid you not, I DNF'd it because I already could tell I wouldn't like it. I did then go onto Goodreads and I checked the reviews, and a lot of people were saying the same thing, so I'm kind of glad that I did that, because quite often I will persevere and I will just push through, but I'm currently in kind of like a place where I've kind of lost my reading spark, and I have read a couple of books now, and I'm currently reading one that I feel as if might reignite that spark that I need, because I haven't read a book in a while that's just got me excited. And so I was trying to rack my brain and think of an author whose books that I've read before that I haven't read since I was a teenager, and there was only one author that I could think of. Now I'm not going to hold up their book that I have because it has their dead name on it, and knowing my luck I'll end up showing it and then I'll have to like edit it out, and I'll move my hand and I'll have to do like a whole tracking edit thing, and I just don't want to deal with that. But the book that I read when I was a teenager was a book that I currently can't see on my shelves because it's probably hidden behind something, but I will put a picture of it here. It's by Juno Dawson, and it's a YA horror, and it's based around the kind of tale of Bloody Mary. And I remember really enjoying the writing and really loving it, and it really did kind of give me the spooky vibe back in the day. And Juno Dawson is a very well acclaimed UK author. She actually came out with her adult debut a couple of years ago, and it's called Her Majesty's Royal Coven, and I felt like it tied in well to this video because not only have I wanted to read this book for a really long time, it's by an author that I've read before that I really enjoyed, but also Her Majesty's Royal Coven is actually on my 2024 must-read list. So I have actually currently started this. I am 23% of the way through. It is an adult, I would say, urban fantasy. It basically is told in the perspective of, I think, 3 witches, or is it 4 witches? It might be 4. It takes place in various places in the UK, and each witch kind of has their own thing going on. And as far as I can tell, there's only been minimal world building so far. It's kind of given to you in drips and drabs, but I like and I loathe it at the same time, because there's like this whole magic system that I'm not quite overly grasping yet, but I in a way still do understand it. It's a really weird one, but from what I can tell, the plot is following these witches, and all of a sudden something comes up where Her Majesty's Royal Coven, which I believe is like the UK's most central, most influential and powerful coven. They are actually heavily funded by the government, but obviously it's like all secret, you know, mundanes don't know that witches exist and that they have magic and whatever else. But there is this boy, and there's this prophecy that comes that basically foretells this boy bringing Satan to Earth, and basically the Earth's going to be destroyed, and somehow these witches are involved. One of the witches is actually the head of the HMRC, which honestly, saying HMRC is hilarious. And actually, like, now I'm thinking about it, it makes sense. Like, the taxpayers are paying the government, and the government are funding these witches, and it's called HMRC. It's funny because for those of you who are American or you live in a different country, HMRC are the people in the UK who deal with our taxes. So whenever we're taxed out of our wages every month, HMRC are the ones that do it. Honestly, it's just clicked and it's funny. But she is, oh, what's the word? I don't want to say, I think she's the head priestess? Oh, now I'm questioning myself. I can't remember, but she's like the head, and so she's like dealing with all of this, and a lot's going on. I'm actually really loving it. I'm very much engrossed in it, and I'm loving the world. I haven't read an urban fantasy in a really long time, and honestly, this is immensely piqued my interest. Out of all the books that I've read in this video, obviously I read the 2 others in this video, I think this is the one I'm most excited about. Like, genuinely, I've started reading it and I can't wait to see where it goes, and I genuinely think this has the possibility to be a high rating for me. I'm loving it. There's also a lot of representation going on in this book, which I really like, and I'm loving it. I think this is the kind of fantasy that I needed. One that's well written, that has a plot going for it, that isn't all about romance, because I feel like that's the way that fantasy is headed for a really long time. I'm just very, very excited for this book. I will update you when I've done some reading. I'm hoping to get a lot of reading done today. I've just finished everything that I pretty much need to do. So we're gonna go on this journey and see how I enjoy this book. Little update, it is the next day. Don't judge me, I am wearing the same jumper. It's been like a rain day, so I was just like, I'm just gonna sling this on and it's fine. So I didn't do half as much reading as I wanted to yesterday. I did get very distracted by my phone, and so today I tried to be less distracted and it's worked. I am now 58% of the way through this. I'm on chapter 30. Guys, I think this might be my first 5-star read in a while. It's a lot different. Well, to be fair, I was going to say it's a lot different to what I thought it would be, but actually I went into this knowing nothing. So I think if I'd went into this with the description that I'd give for the book, I feel like people might think that it's more action-packed than it is. That it does have its moments with like the action and the drama and whatever else, but it does mix really kind of deep and important topics but into the witch world, and it's interesting. I don't actually think I've ever read a book involving a trans character, so that's really interesting to read about, because this is actually written by a trans author, and I'm just living and loving the drama. I love all the perspectives. My favourite perspective though is Neve. I absolutely love her perspective. She is this redheaded Irish like bad bitch, and she just has such good energy. She kind of works with animals, and I love her. She's my favourite character. And I feel like in my last update I said that I wasn't really understanding some of the world building. I now understand it a lot more. It's definitely given to you in kind of like snippets along the way, but I do enjoy that about it, and eventually when everything clicks you're like, oh okay, I get it now, everything's coming together, and I love this. I'm imagining everything in this book so vividly. I literally feel as if it's like a movie in my head, and I love it so much. I will say that I'm a little bit annoyed with myself though, because obviously I read that last book by Juno Dawson years and years ago, and I enjoyed the writing then and the storytelling, and it just never occurred to me that I should pick up another one of her books. And I'm so annoyed that I haven't done it sooner, especially this trilogy. But yeah, I'm absolutely loving this, and it's reignited my reading spark, and I'm so excited to see where this goes. Oh, there's just so much drama and I'm living for it. So this is going to be my last update. It is now currently Monday evening. I officially finished Her Majesty's Royal Coven yesterday during the evening, which was Sunday. Guys, you know, I mean, I think I mentioned it here, how I had lost my reading spark or whatever, and it's been a very, very long time since I've read a book that I at least rated 4 stars. I did rate a couple of books 4 stars in June, which were like romances, but even though I rated them 4 stars, it was more of a vibey 4 stars than an actual, this was written so well, I'm gonna give it 4 stars. So it's been a really long time since I've read a book where I'm like, yeah, this is a high rating and I will never be over it. I ended up giving Her Majesty's Royal Coven 5 big glorious stars. This was such a win for this vlog. Like, this was so worth the wait. I am so glad that I decided not to read that Melissa de la Cruz book and I actually decided to pick up this one instead, just on a whim. And genuinely now, I'm begging you, if you have any kind of like, and I don't just mean like cozy witchy books, I mean I want badass witches with like really great powers, and oh, you know, when you're just in that mood where you're like, I want to go to war, I want a lightsaber. This is what I needed. This is what I needed this year. I needed that fantasy that was just gonna like tickle that little part in my brain that just needs havoc. I love the way that this book incorporated really deep real life topics into kind of like a magical realistic setting. This is technically like an urban fantasy. It takes place in the UK. The majority of it takes place in between Manchester, London and Yorkshire. It just, the world building was, in my opinion, immaculate. Obviously a lot of what she had to write was basically the real world anyway, but in terms of like the magic system and stuff, eventually when you start putting the puzzle pieces together it does make sense, and it's simplistic but it's still done really, really well. I loved reading a book that involved a trans character. I don't actually think, honestly, I'm trying to rack my brain and I genuinely don't think I've read a book with a trans character before. So I loved the fact that I finally have read a witchy book that is like badass witches, because I feel as if I read a couple of witchy books last year, but they were more witchy romance, but it was more like the powers that they had. They might have been powerful, but it wasn't the kind of book where they had to use those powers for the greater good or to stop a war or whatever. And this was just everything that I needed and more, and I just need something else to like quench that thirst now. I have already gone on to another book and it's more of a palate cleanser, but I genuinely, I don't think I'll ever be over this book. It was so iconic. And the last 100 pages, I was holding my breath. I was sweating. I was so nervous. I was on the edge of my seat. I could not put the book down. And the last line, like the last chapter of that book, threw me through a loop. I was not expecting it. Now I'm going to admit, I went on Google, and on your phone, if you scroll down on Google, if you type something in, it gives you what I assume are kind of like most asked questions that other people have typed in. And there was a question which I'm not going to talk about because it's a spoiler. It's a major spoiler. I got spoiled, and when I got to the last chapter I was like, that still hasn't happened yet, so maybe that's kind of like something that someone's misinterpreted and it doesn't actually happen in the first book or whatever. And then something happened and it still took me by surprise, and I was genuinely gobsmacked. And the last line of the last chapter, genuinely, how I haven't gone straight onto the second book, I don't know, but this book was such a win. I know that the Marissa Meyer book I said was a win, and it genuinely was. I really enjoyed that one, but this one trumped the first two. This one exceeded every expectation that I could have had. It was a lot different to what I thought it was going to be. I mean, I did go in with no preconception about what it was going to be anyway, but I mean, I've tried explaining this book to people. Like, I'm trying to get people to read it online, and so I'm like really recommending it right now. And I have said that, you know, it has badass witch vibes and whatever, and I feel like people are going to go into it expecting more action than there actually is. But there are quite a few action scenes, but like just the immense build up in this book is just so worth it, because you go through kind of all the stages, like, of seeing this friendship, of hearing about a war that happened and about how they're all terrified of going to war again, about the losses that they made and, you know, the friendships that made it through and whatever. And then it's just this huge build up to this prophecy possibly happening, and I don't think I'm going to get this book out of my system for a while, and I'm not even mad about it. I'm so excited to go on to the next book, and I swear to the gods, Juno Dawson needs to hurry her ass up and write that last book and get it out into the world, because if it doesn't come out next year, I'm gonna be mad. So anyway, that was this vlog that took me a year to film. I really hope you guys enjoyed it. This is such a time jump. Like, hello past Claire. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you enjoyed it, then please don't forget to give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more content from me, then don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. So bye guys.